All systems go. Cleared for takeoff. What's up, everyone? Tyler Tamboline here, a.k.a. ToeTagginTambo. We're going to start this one off. It's week one. We got the weekly review show. This is a new show for us on this channel. Obviously, new season. We're here. Week one, we'll talk through it all. We've got the perfect lineup. We'll go through some of the other winners around the industry, look at some player pools, break things down, some of the stuff from the site that we had, our tools, projections. Pretty solid yesterday. We'll get to that later. Before I bring in my guy, Nades, I want to remind everyone very quickly, this show is going to be sponsored and presented by LineStar. You can go to linestarapp.com, use the promo code SHIPIT, check it out. They're actually going to join us every second week. We're going to have Tyler from over there hop on with us. Great name, great first name. So he'll hop on with us, break it down even further. But we'll go through that perfect lineup in a second. Before I do us a favor on the way in. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. We're hoping to get to that 3,000 subscribers by the afternoon because we've got the Monday Night Football show coming up with Hoop, Title, and myself. We're going to break down Buffalo and the New York Jets. That'll be on this channel, free at 2 p.m. Eastern. But when we get to 3,000 subscribers, we're giving away the 6-month blast-off bundle. And as I said, before I bring Nades in, I want to remind you about this. So this ends today. We can't stress it enough. We'll talk about it on all our shows today, on Twitter, everywhere. Get it out of the way quickly. But everything ends today. The $59 a month goes to $69. Just to clear that one up, because some people had asked about it. We actually were supposed to go to $69. We said we would after the first month. What we didn't do is that because we said we'll wait for NFL, NBA, NHL projections, ownership, content, etc. More people brought on MMA, best ball added, all the other things that we did. So $10 a month, we're going up to $69. This bundle locks you in at around $53 a month. So keep that in mind. You also still get the free education course. So whether you had a good day, great day, bad day, ugly day, whatever it might be, you can still get this course for free as well. Hoop, myself, went through, broke it all down. There's process, roster construction, live finals and qualifiers, which we had our guy, shout out Brandon, got into the King of the Beach yesterday. We had our guy Nevs get 2 live final seats and I believe a King of the Desert seat as well. So lots of stuff going on there. And then Showdown, of course, we'll have the free shows on the site, but then we'll also be breaking it down for you guys there. Nades, enough of me talking. People are joining us. Thanks all for the support and hopping in. What's going on, Nades? Excited to be here with you for this show for this season.
Yeah, man. Excited to be on the show. I was a big, obviously, in the past realm. I love this show. You jumped on here, talked through it. I learned a ton from this last season. Listening to you talk through game theory approach, right? Not just be results oriented. That's the biggest thing about this show. We could come on here and just speak on results oriented, right? And then that wouldn't be any value to everyone watching the show. We're all trying to be better players, get better at a process, get better using our tools and projections and content that we'll get on a little bit here, which was very, very good on our site over here at shipitnation.com. Excited to be back with you, Tambo. It's NFL season, baby. Best time of the year.
Yeah, and I'm looking at it on my end. If you guys can't see it good enough, I mean, I got it pretty zoomed in, but it's enough so you can at least see what that lineup looks like there. So we can start off with this, I think, Nades, and just talk through it. Obviously, the optimal, very tough to hit. Week one, usually a pretty high-scoring week just because we've had since the end of July to go in and break things down and get all the details, the injuries that pop up, all these other things. But just to look at what the optimal ended up being, just so you know, like, for example, the $100 Millie Maker was 217 and change. It was actually duped. We'll talk about that after by some very good players at that. The 44-44 was won by a single bullet. Shout out to my guy, Irby. I'll bring that one up later, but he put up 200 points. And then just to go back here, this is the difference. This is 261 points was the optimal yesterday. So I'll read it off to you, Nades, here. We had Tua, Tyreek, and Eckler in that game. Right? The game stack, which we'll talk about in a second. Aaron Jones, Ayuk had a big day. Puka Nacua had himself a huge day. They're saying the second coming of Cooper Kupp. No need for Cooper Kupp when you've got Nacua there. So we'll see what happens with him moving forward. Hunter Henry at the tight end position. Jacoby Myers snuck in there. And then the Cardinals defense at 2,500, which happened to be, which we talked a lot about this on the show yesterday and other stuff, the opposite side of the very popular Washington defense. But We'll talk on that in a second too, because they still put up, I believe it was 11 points. It got stat corrected from 12 or something, but either way, a really good day for them. And you'll see some of the exposure some of these top players used on that. And we'll talk more when we get to that. First thoughts though from you, Nades, when it comes just to this optimal. I mean, obviously you can always find some correlation in it. You can see some things that stand out, but ownership wise, there wasn't like any of the super heavy chalk that really got there besides Tyreek for the most part at first glance here. Eckler a little bit as well, because people were on that within the game. But just in general, what's your first thoughts on this optimal lineup?
Yeah, first thing that stood out to me here looking at this lineup, right, is everyone, it feel like the clear-cut chalk in that chalkiest game, right, that Chargers-Miami game, everyone was going to. I was personally underweight on the game, right? I just kind of go against the grain, especially in week one. A lot of unknowns. We saw that Thursday night in that Detroit and Kansas City game. But everyone was talking the Herbert side, right? So this lineup just flipped that build, right? Went to Tua, just said, hey, it's not going to be Waddle. It's not going to be anyone else. It's going to be Tyreek, which it was. Single man, stack that, run it back with Austin Eckler, right? Leave Herbert, leave the Keenan Allens, leave the Mike Williams off the stack, run it back with the guy that can do it all for the Chargers. And we saw that in Eckler. So that's one way, even with, you talk about it all the time, Tambo, and I've learned a ton from this. It's not about who you play, it's how you play them. That's a simple way. Everyone wanted to stack up the Herbert side, right? Gunslinger, he's going to be out there chucking the ball around. Keenan Allen, check down to Eckler. Mike Williams for the touchdown guy. They said, let's go in here and just play the other side of that game. Obviously, if this was the actual optimal, we'll hit on the actual optimal that won the Millie contest.
No, this is the optimal that we're looking at. We'll hit on the winning lineups after this. This is just like 48-3 as well, too. Remember, not many people are going to do that. But I do want to comment quick, because I think you brought up one good point, is for example, the Mostert, Mike Williams secondary stack, even when people weren't going to this game to stack. And again, not going to learn a ton. I look at the optimal just so I see what it was, get ideas, and then I'm going to apply that when we get to actually breaking down winning lineups. And again, beating the field that's in front of you. When you talk about the buzzword right now in DFS, all the sims are focused on what is the field doing and what am I going to do to leverage that or go against it. This is just an example so you can see it. But the one interesting thing is, like, even with the Tyreek popularity, a lot of people were playing Mostert, Mike Williams, or some form of that. Mostert was very popular. Mike Williams very popular. Both did not come through. And this was the way that you could go. And you talked about Herbert as well. If people were doing it, it was like the Herbert with Mike Williams, run it back with Tyreek or Mostert. Some were full game stacks, which we'll get to in a second. But I do just think that's one thing just to quickly note is when you see that. Also, a lot of one-offs that just got there that were sort of good plays that were on their own. We talked some about Aaron Jones, not really on the Green Bay Chicago game. Well, you didn't need to be. You just needed the piece from that. Aaron Jones. Nobody really on the San Francisco-Pittsburgh game, but you just needed Ayuk. So letting those one-offs slip in from those spots, I think, is a good way to take it away and think of it. Obviously, if you could have got to Mac Jones with Kendrick Bourne, with Henry, and then found the exact right guys to fit in all these spots, I think that would have been pretty good as well. But any other thoughts on this one before? And then also Arizona versus Washington was my last one, Nades. Any other takeaways from you before we go look at some of these other lineups?
Yeah, I think you guys nailed it on the show right here on this channel leading up Sunday morning there. I was eating some breakfast, building some lineups, listening to the crew talk through it, and you do it all the time, right? The opposite side of the chalk defense, right? The most volatile position in DFS is the defense, in my opinion, right, in NFL DFS. So when everyone's kind of concentrating on the same, you save $300 in the same game, right? We expect it. If one defense is going to be good, we expect the other side. So talking on that, I had a lot of Cardinals defense. I know a lot of the members in the chat had a lot of Cardinals defense. And yeah, the Commanders still got there at their 30% ownership, whatever they came in at, they were close to that. So that's just little ways to be different and just make your roster construction as a whole a better out to the top, which we're all trying to do.
Yeah, I'm going to show this Mega Millie Maker winner first. So Irby took it down with a single bullet. I actually got a chance to meet Irby. Great dude. Met him in, where was it most recently? I think it was in, I want to say Nashville at the FanDuel Live Final. It might have been at the DK1 in Denver. I apologize, but shout out to Irby. Single bullet. Got the job done here. Incredible DFS player. Just been grinding away, playing full time, he told me. So just to break it down here, Tua, Mostert, Hill, Eckler, and then he also had Jefferson, Bourne, Atlanta defense went a little bit against the grain there, which I don't mind. And then two Green Bay guys, two of the cheapies, actually, Musgrave and Jaden Reed. You can see here, 49,900. And then you can see his ownership was, about 163%. So that's one thing on week one, just of note. Obviously, when you have a longer period of time, some people asked us in the Discord yesterday about this, about what if, situational stuff. Like, do you usually look at your ownership and cap it and all this stuff? Typically, yes, in these large field milli makers. Now, this wasn't the large field for starters. This was the mega 44-44. But just to note, on week one, it's a different beast, right? Obviously, week one, we know there's going to be some of these optimal plays that get there. And you'll see when we get to the $100, some of the exposures that some of these guys took on, because that's really one of the spots you would be wanting to do it. So one of the weeks, I should say, you'd be wanting to do it. Week one is where we know we've had these plays for a month and 2 weeks or whatever. It's been almost a month and a half. So this is his lineup, Nades. I have some thoughts. I'll get your thoughts first, but it does obviously go into that game stack where I know a lot of people weren't as heavy on it, but you can note that even if you were within the game stack, Mostert 34, Tyreek, there's some boosted ownerships, obviously in this big field or smaller field, higher dollar. But then look, Tua only 5%. We talked about that yesterday, where these quarterbacks come in much lower owned, much more spaced out on week one, because everyone has their take and they want to make different stacks work and then just fill it out with the big dogs like Eckler, Jefferson, Tyreek, etc. So give me your thoughts on Irby's winning lineup in the 44-44.
Yeah, the first thing is that Tua point, right? The 5% ownership. I don't know. I wasn't in this contest, so I don't know what Herbert's ownership is, but I had to assume Herbert was probably 10 to 12%, probably double the ownership or close to it that Tua was. And the other thing too is he stacked Mostert, right? So he said, I'm going to say Tua is going to go to Tyreek, drive him down the field. If Tyreek gets a couple touchdowns, that's fine. But I'm going to also secure the goal line work in Mostert. So I'm going to grab all of the offense, in my opinion, how I expect the game to go is going to run through Mostert, Tyreek, and Tua. He grabbed all three of those, and he said on the comeback, it's going to be Eckler, because Eckler gets a ton of work in the passing game, ton of work on the ground, and that's going to be the stack. So I do love that he did that. So, yeah, right there, Herbert, 14.2.
Yeah, I was clicking around, messing around with the thing. Yeah, Herbert ended up being the highest owned in this, 14.2%. Lawrence was behind him around 11. And then you got your guys like Hurts, Watson, Lamar. Those are three guys I was particularly heavy on, and I like Geno as well. So sort of those four guys in there. But this was the ownership breakdown. Yeah, so opposite side of Herbert was obviously going to Tua at $200 less. So that was the other thing. You got $200 back, but don't think you needed that as much as just the idea of being on that opposite side where you had it set up for the win there.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing that I noticed too, right? The Kendrick Bourne, everyone was talking Marvin Mims. People were talking Tutu Atwell here, right? Tutu Atwell still had a good game, still got 20 plus DraftKings points. We'll talk on that in a little bit. Even with Nakua there, both of them smashed. So that was a little thing. He paid up a little bit to $300 more off those 3K guys that people were kind of levitating towards or gravitating towards. Went up to Kendrick Bourne saying, hey, Kendrick Bourne's going to be the number one in that New England offense. They're going to have to pass the ball against Philly. And that seemed to be the case. So that definitely paid off well. That's part of the things, right, with the unknowns, especially in week one. Everyone's kind of just going with what they hear, what they think. And you see a lot of gravitation towards the same plays. So he went off the grain a little bit there, went with Kendrick Bourne. I love that play. I wish I would have listened to our content and tools a little bit more over here on the Kendrick Bourne thing, but I'm sure you're going to hit on that in a little bit. And then in that Green Bay game, I was heavy on the Green Bay game. One of my main teams is actually a stack, Jordan Love with the Jaden Reed and the Musgrove there that he had, both of those cheapies. Both of those guys, right, with no Christian Watson in that offense. Romeo Doubs was supposed to be on a snap count there. Seemed like solid plays there. I like the game to score points. Obviously, the Packers scored points. The Bears lacked a little bit there. And the game didn't absolutely pop off. But at 2,900 at the tight end and the 3K there at Jaden Reed just made the team work. And then the Atlanta defense, I did play the Atlanta defense actually in some of my stuff. It was just gravitating off a little bit higher than that Commanders offense or that Commanders defense. And hey, it's still Carolina. It's still a rookie making his debut here. Pick up some sacks, pick up some interceptions. So that's kind of my overall thoughts. I think it's a well-constructed lineup. I typically build lineups a little bit more correlated than that, but hey, he won $1 million. So
yeah, just 1 second here. I'm just going to pull this up to make sure it's still showing a good speed here. But if you guys could do us a favor, hit the like everyone in the chat is saying for us. We do appreciate that. It helps us. We're just about 130 away from hitting that 3,000 subscribers. So check that out as well. When you're there, hit that subscribe button. Going back to it though, this was the other note. like again yesterday, so almost 50% of the field. So you could say what you want about these fields and people win tickets and all this stuff, but there's a majority of sharper players in this field that at least know what they're doing or are using similar stuff and finding their way to build their own lineups. But almost half the field played Washington. And I'm not being results oriented on the 11 points because I was underweight on them. I talked about a lot of this stuff as ways to get different with them, which I'll show you in some of my lineups after this that we can review. But just to break it down, this is why people are like, okay, Arizona gets 19 at much lower ownership, but it may not be a make or break thing. While it could be, what I do think we'll see here for sure is a guy like Irby running one bullet. You can go back here to the tournament. He had one roster. It was unique and obviously won the $1 million. But just going back, I think he just said, if I got one lineup, I'm fading the chalk D. That's fine. He picked his chalk spots. He had Mostert. He had Jefferson. He had Tyreek. How can I be different? With Mostert and Tyreek, I can get a fairly owned Austin Eckler. He's not super chalky or anything like that. He's coming in under 20% still, but he's got a good spot in this game. But it's going to be the quarterback. Like you said, it's not who you play, it's how you play him. I'm getting a 3-1 stack, but it's pretty unique. Most people aren't playing the running backs against each other, for one thing. He picked his chalk on Jefferson, who I was close yesterday. I said he can get you 100 yards in the first quarter. It was 100 and something by half, 134 or whatever it was. He actually slowed down after that, but either way. But I really love this move. This, like I said, can be explained pretty easily to me, just not going to play the chalk with one lineup. Bourne is just similar. I'm already eating these guys. I'm not going to play Mims. And you could say that Jaden Reed was his Mims because the same price. But my point being, it doesn't really matter how you want to select it. The way I see this, and it's an extremely sharp move, I actually like this one quite a bit, is you buy up what's called like a bundle pack. We talked about our Blast-Off bundle. Last day to get that, by the way. Plug that in one more time. But if you want to play Musgrave and Reed, you're looking at a $5,900 player. And I think someone mentioned this is the results-oriented side. We're not going to do this because my guy Chig would have helped me win a lot more money in something where I had the stack with Olave, Thomas, Chig, all that stuff. He missed like a wide-open touchdown. But Musgrave missed a TD, lost balance, fell inside the 10, should have had 6 more points. Yeah, that's all the possibilities of what could happen. But that when you're building this, you're looking at it that way. Could he have went Musgrave and Mims? Yes. But then you add another chalk piece. They actually didn't even do that much different in that. Versus this, you kind of look at it like, I only need one of them to do something where I'm buying the combo pack on a team that is down an option, at least in Watson. I know Dobbs ended up playing and ended up doing well, but just the point of you can kind of buy that for cheap. And as long as the rest of your stuff does its job, you'll take what you get out of this. He actually ended up doing quite well here, getting almost 15 for 5,900. Could he have done a lot better? Yes. But the idea of how you're building it, I really do like that quite a bit. Anything else you want to talk about with this one, Nades, before we move on to some other stuff?
No, I think it's good. I do like grabbing, especially when they're two cheaper pieces, right? Like, because you don't need them both to go out there and get you 10 points, 12 points, right? You're, like you said, you're middle in that center there, and just 5,900, you're hoping for 15 points combined. And that's what he got, 15 to 20 points combined, because it makes the rest of your lineup work, right? It makes you allows you to get Tyreek Hill. It allows you to get Eckler. It allows you to get Justin Jefferson, who you're centering your lineup around in terms of your fantasy production. And that's exactly what happened. Everything else kind of just falls into place and just allows it to work.
Yeah. And going forward too, guys, like today's a little bit more preset because we don't want to be on here all day. As always, we talk less is more. We want to get you as much information as possible, try and make it as valuable as possible, and then let you roll it out from there. But I will say this, going forward, we want this to be sort of a community created content type show where you say, I'd like to see this. Can you show me that? And we could try and do that. Just today, I do have some things I really do want to show off. So just hopefully you can appreciate that. We'll go through a breakdown as much as possible where you can throw out questions there. If I see them and they make sense, I'll answer them for sure. You guys know I love to keep it interactive, but I want to show you this one. So this is going to tie in two things. One, though, everybody knows who Chipotle Addict is. I'm not getting into any politics going back and forth here. I just want to show you guys on this lineup, though, like 194, a very good score, almost at the top, almost won the money, still helps have a very good day for Chipotle Addict. He was right up there with second, fourth, eighth. He had 4 in the top 10. Very impressive. So Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins, Geno Smith, just shows how much he spread it out on his max entries, which was 23 lineups. Duped one, actually, but not something you usually see. Let's go look and see here really quickly using the Fantasy Labs tool, by the way, just to go through and break this all down under contest dashboards. I haven't seen C Parker H, so just to note is what it is, but I meant to stick there for 1 second. Sorry, to go down here. Pause it so it's not running on you guys there, but this is the lineup. If you can see it there, it was a Baker, Godwin stack with Jefferson on the run back. Also did the Reed Musgrave move. So you guys see that. Did a secondary with Tyreek and Eckler. Landed on Jamal Williams. Again, just probably in general, a lot of chalk, right? Like I told you, Eckler's not too chalky for what he was, but he was the most popular of these guys up at the top in these expensive running backs. Obviously, you had Mixon in there at 6,800, but he doesn't count in that range. But again, just a fair amount of mid-tier, but then you go look, Tyreek, Washington, Jefferson, Jamal Williams, and Eckler with a stack that obviously makes sense in Baker, Godwin, Jefferson. Again, great build. Just that's why there's a possibility it came out that way. But going back here, I want to talk about this one, Nate. So Mac Jones, Juju, Bourne, added Gesicki in as well, and then went Tyreek, Raheem Mostert, Eckler, top of the chalk, best play at wide receiver, most optimal in most places when you were looking at it on other sites as well, like our partner at Run the Sims. They were using their Sims, and Jefferson was coming out the most optimal. Talked about that on the Mayo Show, the Mayo Media Network, where him and I do it every Friday. And then the chalk Washington defense, which we'll get to in a second as well and spend more time on that. But just to note it, in the higher dollar, smaller field, any smaller field for that matter, doesn't matter if it's a $100 King of the Beach qualifier or $110. I guess they made them this year, a little bit more rake in there, I think. But just in general, smaller field, right? But if this type of thing happens, it's easier to get a leg up on the field and just go off. If that's, if at the end of the day, you are sitting there anywhere near the top and you have 4 guys from one side, you just basically are cheering all day for the Patriots to score points, and you've got it set up that way. It can work anywhere. I'm just saying, obviously, when you get into those bigger fields, it's more likely somebody has this type of combination without Juju or without Gesicki, where they have a different combination and they're beating you. In a smaller field, it always makes a little bit more sense to attack it a little bit more this way, because again, I talk about this all the time, Nades, but the parlay idea, people that sports bet will get the idea of a parlay. What's easier to hit? The 9-game parlay, that's all random outcomes that you require, 9, 12 games, whatever. The single game parlay where you can correlate it up obviously becomes a little bit easier because you can make correlations happen. And then the smaller the single game parlay, the better, because then you can really correlate it. He had 4 guys of his 9 from New England. He had 3 others from the highest total, most popular spot on the slate. And then he just filled it out with Jefferson and Washington, 2 of the best plays at their positions based on having salary to spend and ability to go around there. So very sharp lineup, would expect nothing different from Chipotle Addict. But just to note, the setup of it was really kind of a 4-game parlay. If you want to think about like that, like Patriots hitting hard. The second point of the parlay would be the Miami LAC game with those pieces in it. And then kind of a 4-gamer. But talk about the odds on this 4-gamer when it's Washington D and Jefferson, the 2 plays that everybody knows that you need to hit. It's like a 3.5-gamer, if you will, because of some of the odds leaning in their favor. But you guys get the point of where I'm going with this. Nades, give me your thoughts on this lineup. Anything else you want to add with this one before we go to the next stage?
Yeah, I think it's obviously a very sharp lineup. It's not typically how I build lineups, but I'm not also playing these smaller, super high dollar fields. So that's definitely one note for everyone watching, right? It's all, you have to account for what kind of contest, what kind of lineup you're building, right? You're not putting the same lineup into every single contest. Granted, a lot of times you do, right? Just for the just in case factor, right? If you hit the absolute stone nuts, right? You're going to ship everything. It doesn't matter, but you don't build for that, right? You build to be profitable in the contest that you're building the lineup for, which is obviously what Chipotle did here. Typically, I wouldn't run a 4-0 stack, right? 4 from one team, the quarterback, 3 receivers without a run back, just because I'm playing some larger fields, right? And typically you need to be closer to that, right? So I probably would have left Gesicki off personally, because I do want to touch on the Mac Jones, Juju, Kendrick Bourne. We have this nice little tool, the stack rankings tool over here based on our proprietary projections and information. And if you take a note right there, the very top, Mr. Mac Jones, Juju, Kendrick Bourne was our top rated stack for value on the entire slate yesterday. It wasn't that Chargers game. It wasn't some of that Cleveland Joe Burrow game, which obviously flopped. It wasn't Baltimore, none of that. It was right there. The Patriots, Kendrick Bourne, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Mac Jones. Shows you the total expected ownership that we have based on our ownership projections right here, courtesy of Line Star right here, which this show is sponsored by, and gives you a value. So I did want to hit on that stood out to me big time. And some of the best players in the world, whether you like the guy or not. He's a very sharp player, and he was on the same thing. So that was one thing that definitely stood out to me.
Yeah, and for those that don't know, again, this is a spot to do both. We're going to show off some of the stuff on the site that you wouldn't get to see. It's the day after now. We could share, but all the members had access to this, and I think a lot of people confuse that. Oh, it's just picking winners or just the, Hoop, Tambo, and the rest of the guys making their picks. That is not what this site is. We have projections with projections and ownership for all slates. That is what creates tools like this that we use to build in, where this auto updates when our projections and ownership update, which is multiple times throughout the week. This auto syncs. These are all based off our projections. I'm going to go through it more in a second. For Showdown, we have the same thing with our projections, but we do have the stuff for people that have less time. We are spending all day on this stuff. I'm starting my day getting ready, doing my own review and analysis of DFS. I'll go to my lineups here in a second. Then I move on and do this show every Monday where we're going to go through and review it all and spend even more time on it, which I think is an important part of DFS and why I've been, I think, successful and around for so long in the game, being able to do this. And then other thing, then we're going to a Monday Night Football show where we're going to have all the information early for that for you guys. Free show on this channel. So subscribe if you haven't already, but it's not just the picks. It's all the data as well. This is our stack rankings. I'll break it down more in a second. We have DVP rankings coming. We wait a few weeks just to get some more data on those, but those will be very basic. But we'll also have the advanced where you can break it down by position and everything that goes with that. And then we cover other slates, tiers, afternoon, prime time. Our guy Marley, a lot of people said their best stuff yesterday for making profit was in tiers. So they made a lot of money off of that, and then still were able to have ideas going into the afternoon and the evening. So just to go back on this, Nades, though, because you brought it up, some of the stuff, like Kendrick Bourne was popping heavy in our stuff. Mac Jones had a pretty good day. Zay Flowers had an awesome day. We saw people use the two guys here. The guy you actually might have wanted to use naked was Jordan Love, but just in general, that double pairing popped up there. We had, everyone knew this when it was a higher owned one, but with Sutton, Puka Nacua, Tutu Atwell in the mix here. This was up the board. The Herbert and Tua game obviously was the one that was popping. So I should listen to this stuff more and not just go on my, game theory side of things on week one when I know it's going to be super popular. Trey Palmer. And again, people will wonder, these are different than stack rankings out there. I've seen other stack rankings people have where it's just team name only and whatever that might be. I've seen other stack rankings where it's the quarterback with only one pass catcher, and then no shit, it's always going to be Josh Allen and Diggs and AJ Brown and Hurts and all. This has nothing to do with that. This is using our projections to give it down. This is the value one, the value two, how it values out, and what the total ownership was. So when you're looking to build your lineups, how chalky they're going to be. If you're starting with this one and you truly like it, that's fine, but you maybe need to get a little bit different elsewhere within the stack. No different than the Justin Herbert one, going from there and breaking it down. So just a real quick look going down throughout. Trey Palmer was on there, Pat Freiermuth before he got injured, Tyreek Hill, and all of that as well. So just to keep that in mind when you guys are checking out our stuff, there's more than just picking winners all day over on our site. So you guys can check that. For that, let's go to the $100 Millie Maker winner quick. And then I'm going to end after this when we talk more. We'll talk some of our stuff, your lineup, my lineups. Get out of here. If you guys have any other questions, you can throw them into the chat. But just to note here, Nades, two very sharp players. Redcoat, probably not talked about enough or as much. Very underrated, super good player. Always am studying and seeing what Redcoat's up to. But Hishbu, one of the best in the world, literally just won the Fantasy Baseball World Championship on DraftKings for $1 million. I'll see him later this year at Key West for the Tournament of Champions, where you get an automatic ticket. Shout out to my guy Todd, won the Fantasy Golf World Championship. I was his +1 there, and he'll be bringing me along again. So we're going to have some fun down in Key West. I know Petty Theft will be there winning the Fantasy Basketball World Championship. And I'm missing somebody else. I apologize, but it's going to be a good crew. So, Nerdy Tenor, my guy, Daniel, won the NHL Championship, which was held the same time Petty Theft won. I was there, came 8th in that NBA Live final. It was an exciting time to be down in Denver for that one for me. But they had a duplicate lineup here, which is what it is. It's actually surprising, though. I guess the obvious is that there's a lot more entries, 28,000. So it's possible here. If you go back, Redcoat only had 2 dupes in the whole thing. Again, he ain't going to be mad, by the way, winning 550,000 and change, whatever else on the rest of the day that he won with it. But just funny, only 2 dupes in the whole tournament. One of them happened to be the winner. Again, with the amount up top, not going to be a problem. Hishbu had 12 dupes. They both played similar size player pools. And before I go to the winning lineup, I just want to show something quickly. Let me do it this way. Let's do Hishbu and Redcoat. And you can put them side by side. And just so you guys see how this tool works, obviously is going to be the field. What was the field ownership and what were they, right? There's Hishbu, there's Redcoat. So Washington defense was 37%, just under, in this tournament. 85% for Hishbu, almost all in for Redcoat. So start there, Nades. Give me your thoughts on that one, because a lot of conversation around the Washington defense yesterday. And in the end, I'm not being results oriented because they won literally two of the best. Hishbu right now, one of the best players in the entire world, and always has been. Again, just sort of now recently when you see it doing in baseball for the World Championship. He's doing it in all sports, really. But Redcoat, a little bit more underrated, just unknown, I would say. He's literally been one of the best for a while as well. But these are two of the best in the world going almost all in on this defense. So start there, Nades. First thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's one thing to do, right? I mean, you can match the field, but obviously they had conviction, right? The salary, their price tag made sense, right, with what they saw. And they were just okay saying, hey, Washington defense isn't going to make or break me. I'm just going to go all in. They're going to be chalky, and I'm going to get significantly over the weight. So if it does come that they get you the 11 points that they got, that, hey, maybe I got chances, right? I got different combinations. I trust my other process. I trust my other positions. So they kind of used it as a free square, right? And took that out of their lineup building process and just said, hey, especially for Redcoat, I'm going to go all in and just worry about the other 8 spots on the lineup there. So that's one way to definitely approach the chalk defense. I think I never really want to be around the field, in my opinion, on a defense that's going to come in 35 to 40% ownership. It's either go all in or be significantly under the weight, which I personally was. But I don't know if you have anything else to add, because I know you did do MME as well yesterday.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things is that you just said, though, is like that was the question yesterday. We all knew what they were going to be for ownership. It was how are you handling it? And that's just to show how these guys handled it, not just because they won. I was just curious. I'll pull theirs up because they're there. But the note of, like, again, what were some ways to get different? So on my slate plan on the site, I talked about them specifically. I said maybe you put them with Brian Robinson as a way to get different. Brian Robinson was the exact same price as a very chalky Jamal Williams, who I also liked. I was playing some with Williams, with Robinson, and with Washington. You could do that, but I'm just saying it was a way where you could set yourself up to be a different. If we knew they're going to be owned and we knew Jamal Williams was going to be owned, there's still going to be lots of lineups where those two show up together. So that was one way just to think about stack pairings or things like that, even though they're not stacked at all. It's like I always talk about how you can leverage it out. There is going to be certain spots. Like if you're playing Tampa Bay if you're not playing Jefferson yesterday, I have no problem playing a Tampa Bay defense. It's not that the Tampa Bay defense specifically ends up being the reason he gets shut down, and he didn't, by the way, but just saying non-results oriented. It's that if you're already not doing it and you land there, it's kind of just like a secondary thing in your mind where you can be like, all right, well, I'm good with that. I actually think it's a good spot. I'm already saying I'm not playing Madison. I'm not playing Jefferson. I'm assuming that Tampa could have themselves a decent day here. If I land there, I'm fine with it. This is a similar thought process. Now with Washington, they decided price too cheap. What is the true separation of some of those other defenses actually going to be? And it did not end up being that much. 19 was the range of outcomes. On the other, that was the result, of it. They probably were weighing their range of outcomes when they started with it. At that price, the field already heavy on it. Why don't I just get my leverage this way? Go all in almost or completely overweight on them and let everything else fall where it may. It matters what you do at the other positions instead. But you'll see they still got away with some other moves here. Like Tyreek, first of all, was the right move, and they ended up crushing that. But knowing Tyreek, let's sort it this way, actually. So for Hishbu, Washington D, Mostert, likely, Tyreek. Now Bourne, big-time separator, 5%. He has 40. Bijan, 9%, 38. There was late news on Cordarrelle Patterson. I would suggest that would be a move based on that. And even with the ugly price tag where you were uncertainty, if there's going to be uncertainty, a lot of times to do it is on a week like week 1, where you can see what that looks like. And if you get it right, then you're in good shape. And he put up 20 points. It was fair. Jamal Williams, overweight for both of them. Jefferson actually was, again, this is the thing, Redcoat, interesting stuff. Underweight on Jefferson at only 10% and only 2 dupes, but both ended up making it onto the winner. So just little things like that you'll see. But overall, both pretty heavy. Redcoat was very heavy on Geno Smith. DK Metcalf and Lockett obviously come with that as a product of the ownership and just stacking and that the nature of that in general, as does Cam Akers. I would imagine we'll see some Atwell. Interesting. Let me see here. Atwell only 5%. And then let's see by points, because we could do it this way. Nakua, none for either of them. So that feels wrong. Not because of what their exposure are, but it says the field had 0 in 28,000 entries. So I actually don't believe that. So maybe it was so little that they code it as 0, like a 0.2. But anyway, not my tool. I'm just showing you what I see. But I definitely think that seems crazy. But, I've seen crazier things. So anything else to comment on their exposures there, Nades? I'm going to pull up what the winning lineup was quickly here before we get to the final, where I'm going to break down a couple of my lineups. But just in general, anything else you want to talk about with their exposures there? This is their winning lineup, which was actually an Anthony Richardson lineup.
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely good. I was high on the Geno Smith. I know you were high on Geno Smith on that Seattle game too. And it just shows, right? Like, you don't need to go all in on all these plays, right? You saw both two of the best players in the world. They picked their spot, was Washington defense, where they went crazy on, and they kind of just picked a couple other games, couple other quarterbacks centered around that, and found their way to the top. So it's just all about how you approach your other lineup spots. And they just took the free square that they saw was a free square in Washington defense and built from there.
Yeah, and I should note too, okay, so our guy Jordan Newens, shout out Newens, was 0.77%. So weird they show the 0.2s and not that. But really quickly on that too, I was just mentioning one thing is like I did make a mistake there because the winning lineup did not have Jefferson on it. That was the exposure, and Redcoat had 10%. Jefferson, he was on the winning lineup that our other guy, Irby, had over on the Mega. And shout out to our guy, Dwayne, MYG fan. I was a big fan of this show. He watched it in the past. Should get Dwayne on an episode sometime soon. I'm sure he'd be happy to hop on. But it says hit the like button, folks, is most important. Yeah, we talk about it. Just going back to it, another quick marketing plug in the middle here. But last day to get in on the bundle and you get the free course, that's definitely something we talk about in the process segment here. I talk a lot about going through and actually being able to look at the lineups that, review and analyze, go back through and see what people are actually doing. You learn a lot from this. And it's when you make those micro movements in the moment, when you're making that last minute decision or your final lineup of the week or something like that, you think this guy or this guy, some of these tidbits that you can take away are where you can actually say, I remember Nades and Tambo, or whoever was on the show that week, talked about it and said that this would be a kind of like an idea that you could use or some game theory that you can apply. So definitely think these shows are important. Why I like doing them. I know they're not the most watched shows. I like doing these shows from my perspective, just because I actually get to review, learn some stuff for myself, apply that to my own stuff when I'm going into the next week or showdown slates, different things like that, depending on what I'm reviewing. So just to go to their winning lineup, Nate. So it's Anthony Richardson, Michael Pittman Jr., run it back with Ridley. Then they had the standard, the Washington defense. Bijan ended up being in there. Aaron Jones, Tyreek Hill, Hayden Hurst. The secondary stack was Bijan, Hayden Hurst. I really like that one. I'll talk more on that in a minute, but you could talk about it too. Go ahead, Nate, take it over. What do you see with this lineup, man? Talk to me about this one.
Yeah, so they just took the Anthony Richardson, right? They took the unknown there, paired him with the number one receiver there, expected points there, ran it back with Ridley, right, with that air raid offense there in Jacksonville. I love that single stack. Obviously, great play there. You get rushing upside with Anthony Richardson, saying, hey, Pittman's going to be the guy, right? There's unknowns. They took the chance. Pittman was the guy, caught the touchdown there. The nice thing about the secondary stack there with Bijan is they knew Bijan, there was uncertainty, right? Rookie, he was 8K, paid. They took the chance, right? Paid up for probability there and said, hey, let's go ahead and run this back with a tight end that's a little bit more expensive than those tight ends that people were gravitating, right? The Likeleys, the Musgroves. And
I think it was the same price as Likely, actually, $3,000.
Okay, so that's even, yes. But he was $100 more than Musgrove. Both of those guys were 15. Likely was 30%, I think, and Musgrove was 15 and some change. And you get the secondary correlation, which I know you love correlation. I build my lineups with correlation. So I love that move right there. The secondary, no, they're both going to be low owned. And hey, Bijan does it through the air with dump offs on the ground. And Hayden Hurst on the run back comes back and catches a touchdown. So I definitely love that little secondary correlation there for sure. Obviously, the Tyreek Hill, they were heavy on Tyreek Hill. Obviously, there was guys you could pay up for. Justin Jefferson, right? Devontae Adams, which we'll hit on when we go through our lineups. At least I had interest in him just being squeezed up there. So I think it's overall a great roster construction. Obviously, they kind of pushed the chips in on Washington, takes that piece out of the equation. And then Aaron Jones just kind of fell into place, obviously saying, hey, a lot of unknowns with Jordan Love's led offense. Aaron Jones is going to have to step up in the passing game with Christian Watson out. He's going to be the lead running back there. And mind you, he could have been in for a bigger day. Pulled up on his hammy on that long receiving touchdown there. Obviously, the game was out of reach, so they sat him down. But overall, it's very, very well correlated, constructed lineup. And obviously, they're $1 million richer. Yeah,
chopped it up really nice. But I think just another thing that stood out for me was obviously, some things, the ownership, a little bit lower, like 127% in that field is fine. I think a lot of people were 150 plus. So I'll look at that in a second. But just to note, like, this was another thing. I talked about this on a couple different shows last week, and then I guess I didn't apply it fully. I got some lineups that were similar to this, but if I was playing Anthony Richardson, I would definitely think of it this way, was that last year in week 1, I think it was like Dotson or Curtis Samuel, or maybe both, with like as whoever it was, they were playing Washington on the other side last year, and they ended up being popular, but then nobody played Wentz. This was almost the reverse effect where people knew that Anthony Richardson was going to get played. Now, he didn't get played that much in this field, right? Obviously, people went down a little bit, but they knew that he was going to get played in cash and things like that. But then to stack him with Pittman Jr., who's only 2%, and then also these balanced wide receivers where you could easily fit Tyreek, Jefferson, Chase, we didn't talk about because obviously didn't end up in winners, but didn't do anything. But just in general, building out this way, expensive running back when not many were on that. Little things like this stood out to me. So just, it's as simple as that sometimes, where again, easier to find it. I talk about this analogy all the time. DFS, it's like a puzzle where we all have the same puzzle. We all have the same pieces in front of us to start the week. That's what I like about these shows, but nobody has the box. Nobody has the cover of the photo. Whoever can figure out the majority of the puzzle to make the best version of it by the end of the week wins, got the puzzle right. But nobody has the box to look off of. And I love that analogy because it's like we all have the same pieces. You can easily see at the end, look, a puzzle is a lot easier to put together when you got the box sitting in front of you with the pictures and you start clicking pieces in. And then for those that live the dad life or the mom life, if they're watching, you're out there, you're watching your kids do it and put these puzzles together. They're saying, how are mom and dad putting this thing together so easily? We're cheating. We're looking off the box. We don't get to do that until after these lineups end. So I think this is the key. But when you see it after, it's like, I liked Ridley. I saw why people were playing Richardson. I see all this stuff, but our stuff liked Kendrick Bourne and Hayden Hurst. Tyreek was obvious. You see all this, but it's just little ways of how you can put it together. And that's what allows you to get away with 36% on 30. It doesn't matter about those. It matters what's going on around it. I love, though, the Bijan Robinson, Hayden Hurst setup here because a couple of reasons. One, we know you want some secondary stacking when you only have a single stack and run back, and then you're just plugging in some of the value plays on the week. That makes sense. But a way to get that parlay going, like we talked about earlier, is to get a secondary in there. And with Hayden Hurst being the exact same price as likely at way less ownership, maybe almost 1/10 in this field, probably close to that, not quite 1/6 or 1/8, but just in general. And then getting that late news on Cordarrelle Patterson, getting in on Bijan like Hishbu did. I definitely thought that. Our guy Ham is in the chat. Revenge game too. Yeah, for Hurst, definitely. But Hurst was kind of popping at the start of the week until likely popped up. So it's always that's another thing to take note of. Remember that stuff. And also don't wait to, I wait till Sunday to build, which I think is important. Wait till you have all the news at hand. Wait till all the pieces show up. Back to that puzzle analogy, they get dropped off in groupings, but everyone has the same pieces on Sunday to go with before lock. But what I will say is it does help to not just review this stuff, analyze it, and look at it, but to go out and actually spend the time throughout the week to see some of these things. Because I can tell you right now, Hayden Hurst was definitely popping. He was our number one tight end, actually, for value in our projections leading up until we got the likely news. I know a lot of people run around victory lapping in the end. Oh, we had Hurst above likely. Good. That's awesome. I'm saying that, there was a reason likely popped up. So don't be surprised about that. How you're building victory lap that. I like that idea of saying I didn't fall for the likely because I liked Hayden Hurst before that. He still had a good matchup. There still were guys out. I found a secondary correlation and pairing where Bijan actually kind of stepped up at almost no ownership, and that kind of made sense. I like that stuff, but just to note it, it's keeping an eye on the stuff throughout the week so that you can find it and then be able to find out how you can put it together. We talked earlier about our stack rankings. That's not fully, saying to victory lap it as much as say, look at what's at hand, use the tools and the data, but you can't do nothing with it until you go and build a lineup and put it together. So start using it to go and actually build your lineups and find that stuff. And you can see, and I mentioned this earlier, James, congrats. I saw you in the Discord. Really appreciate it, man. That's awesome. The one thing about it is, like I said, for this week, for a time crunch, we had a planned show. So next week is when we'll be doing more of that stuff. I want to get to my lineups here just so people can see it and get my thoughts on that. So you guys can, some people said, I want you to analyze what you did or your core lineup for the site and all that. And I got no problem doing that. I want to show you guys it. But any final thoughts on this one, Nades, before we move on?
Yeah, just real quick is that we talk about roster construction, right, and how you build your lineup, right? The industry yesterday, right? It's the league of the wide receivers. You had Chase, you had Devontae Adams, you had Tyreek Hill, you had Justin Jefferson. So everyone wanted to get two of those guys in that lineup. If you see this with the construction, everyone was going the cheap running backs, two of those spend up wide receivers, and then whatever else fit. This, he went up a spend-up running back, two spend-up-ish running backs, right? Aaron Jones kind of in that mid-tier, but he was more expensive than those cheap guys in those 5K range. And he only grabbed one of those top-end guys in Tyreek Hill, grabbed you two mid-tier receivers that made sense in the lineup, right, with that correlated stack, and just flipped the build, which is so important to do in these contests, and found himself $500,000 richer.
Yeah, and really quickly, too, I just want to go back to touch on James one more time because I just saw the second part, what I could have done differently. Keep in mind, man, we talk about this all the time. Me specifically, I go through this plenty on other shows. Hoop and I did on the education video. This show and a lot of that stuff is around process, right? When people say trust the process, I said everyone says that, but then no one actually helps people learn a process or learn to get better at the game. Everyone, looking to join SHIPITNation.com, that's what it's all about. It's trying to get better. We talk about it all the time being like a gym. Like you can be on the outside peering in the window and see all the equipment, but you actually have to go in and use it. You can't just look for, this week one didn't go well. Hopefully the next 2 weeks go or I'm out. Like that's perfect. Then we appreciate you signing up, but that's not what we're about. It's probably not the best place for you. What we're trying to do is actually get you better, recognize the long game in it and go from there, because you have to, in this case, what you want to do, James, is trust the progress. You found a process, you used it. 16th, there might have been nothing you could do differently. It might have been a guy dropped something. Could have been a few more catches, a touchdown here, a drop ball there for somebody else that's above you, all these different things. But you had a great result. On the flip side, it could be horrible. I'm not going to pull it and look at it today. It's all comes down to the little things. But I'm saying if you think that you put the time in, and I know you did, you're inside the Discord, you got the process, you build it out, you put together a good lineup, you're happy with it. That's the thing, right? You have to do it. And Joe says, keep grinding. You'll get there. How? Right? And that's what I'm saying. And they'll say, you're going to learn from us. You'll learn from us in the Discord. You'll learn from us when we're on our shows. You do need to do that. I'm not saying that, but that's why we said we're not just going to talk about it, be about it. And I'll flash it up one more time just so people have it. But like, this is no joke. There's no other site out there I know that created this for this season. And we will toot our own horn because I don't think they did it. This is a 4-hour course. We put it out 4 weeks in advance. So you could spend an hour a week to make sure you'd get on it. But this took Hoop and I days to record, edit, process, get it right for you. And it's not, poor us. We wanted to do this, but we're saying we're not going to talk about it. We're going to be about it. This is how you become a better player. You get this free when you sign up. So we're going to have other education courses come out, and it's not a shot at other sites as much as to say that's the whole point. Everyone says that, but they don't actually go out and execute on it. That's the difference maker. So little things like that, just so you guys see it. I'm going to flip over. We got about just under 15 minutes. We want to keep these shows an hour or less. This was my main core on the site. And again, we're not results oriented. We'll show it off. I think I lost 1,800 or 1,692 was the amount of money I lost on this lineup. If I recall correctly, I posted in the Discord because someone said, these tout sites, they never help you out. They just want to see you lose and they want to put their good picks out there. And then I want to make sure they suffer. Well, we do suffer. That's the difference, but I don't care. I'm very comfortable with, back to the course, the process. My bankroll management allowed for this lineup to be in play. My numbers and everything I liked and looked at showed me that if we had a good day with this lineup, it could have been a very big day. And that's why I was talking about playing in some smaller field stuff and some higher dollar qualifiers, like the $470 queue to get in. Or actually, this one was in the, I think it was the 470. It was in the 150. What we're looking at here is the 153 max. This is one of my main 3 lineups. This was the main core on the site that any member saw. And this was where I was focused on. I like this game. I knew it was a division game. There was always a possibility that this happened the way it did. A lower scoring game. Deshaun's side was what I talked about all day, being on that side over the Burrow side. We even talked about Chubb and Cleveland defense as an option in some other lineups, but just to note it. So the core was Deshaun, Amari Cooper, and Njoku, and then run it back with Chase and Mixon to be able to get all 5 pieces in this game. That going a little bit overboard on the game stack allowed me to feel good about Jamal Williams, Marvin Mims. Then where I got different was the Mims secondary was with Adams. So I had a secondary stack in there. And then going with no Chargers Miami game and going with Amari Cooper, Jamar Chase, and Adams over a Tyreek, I talked about using the Chargers defense going up against Miami with no Armstead and being off that game. Obviously did not work out, and that's okay. But if you can see the process and the thoughts going into this lineup, game stack, secondary stack. I talked a lot about this. People say sometimes, I don't like using an expensive player as my second guy into the lineups, because if he has a ceiling day and gets you 2 touchdowns, it's likely that you would need Jimmy G in this example using Devontae Adams. But talked about this on the free show yesterday before lock, leading up, I guess, to before lock. Our show ends before that's here nor there, just a content piece. But just to tell you is that I talked about Devontae Adams and Jefferson as being 2 of the guys where if they go off, they can go 12, 120, get you 12 points on the catches, all the points, 112 on the yardage and the bonus points, and not even get a touchdown and still put up 25, 26 points in that spot, 22 to 26 points, depending on what they actually end up getting. But just to say it, where it doesn't mean you need their quarterback. So I'm okay with that versus a guy like Tyreek is typically going to be, if he's going to put up 50, Tua would be attached. So I liked how those other lineups were built. But just to note it, that's what my first lineup looked like. Decent ownership overall. Some spots I got completely different than the rest of the field and was still able to get away with it. No real of the 35 to 40% guys, but just to show it, that's the type of build I would like. A lot of the money was in higher dollar, smaller fields, or in this case, it was fine still because I thought, again, getting away with a lower ownership in a 44-44 entry, I built it with all things considered. So Nades, I'll let you jump in. Results, I don't care. Personally, the money, we'll get it back. And on top of it, I like how it was built myself. So any thoughts on this one, Nades, that you've got before we go to the next one?
Yeah, the first thing I'll say is, and I saw our guy Hamlet, sharp dude in the chat, said Burrow was the talked about side, right? You came back and said, let's flip the script. Let's go to the other side of that game. Still grab the 2 main pieces of that Cincinnati team, right? In Mixon and Jamar Chase. They can still get there, even saying Deshaun can outscore Burrow in that same game. You overstacked it because it's a little bit of a smaller field. Makes you unique there. You can eat some of that chalk there in Jamal Williams and then and Marvin Mims. But you said, hey, I'm going to go to the other side. I'm going to pair Mims, middle of that ownership there, with the guy up at the top in the wide receiver range that can still outscore and contest with the Chases, the Jeffersons, the Tyreek Hills. Obviously, it didn't happen that way, but we're not results oriented. It's the process. And he got squeezed. You threw him in there. Obviously, he didn't get there. And then you said, hey, I'm already under on that most popular game that everyone wants to go to. High total there in Miami in the Chargers. Let me just grab the defense and say it's week 1. It's going to play a little bit sloppier. If it goes off, I'm going to lose. But if it doesn't, maybe it's because the defense gets me there.
Yeah. And one note, like Devontae Adams or Jamar Chase, I could have just ran it back with Mixon. But like if I move one of those to like Jamar to Tyreek and the defense down to the Commanders, I think it's going to be a lot better. You're going to add almost 38 points or so right here with Tyreek. You're going to add 9 more points here, 47 more points. Like it's obviously a much better score, but that's not what we're looking at here. It's why did I build it the way that we did? So I think that's probably enough. It makes sense for me on that one. I'll show you another one, another quarterback I was high on. They were in my favorite 4 in my slate plan was Jalen Hurts. I was sort of going with the pay ups. One note, I know he's biased, but just to Ham's point, yeah, I was thinking like this as well. Being on Deshaun when everyone's on the Burrow side is similar to being on Tua when everyone is on the opposite side with Herbert. And then also to note, just going back to it, but like Jamar and Devontae was not the answer when the answer was Tyreek and Jefferson. The point difference is massive. So just to note those little things that you see, but that's being results oriented. We're talking about why we went with that build. Let's go to the next one quick. Jalen Hurts, another full game stack. Dallas Goedert, AJ Brown, ran it back with Schuster and Bourne. This is where I was taking some of the stack ranking stuff into my stuff because we talked about it in the chat. I said, obviously, if I'm playing these Jalen Hurts stacks, I'm going to go on week 1 where it becomes meaningful. Like he gets there with 3 guys, him and 2 others, and then the other side actually shows up to push him. And then I was able to get Mixon and Cooper still, the game that I was heaviest on. Instead of Jefferson, I went with Madison. And then because I wasn't playing any Denver values and I needed to save money, I went down to Las Vegas. Obviously, Tampa Bay, I think was $100 cheaper, but I was in on Madison. So just a quick breakdown again, really low ownership for a game stack that I liked. It ended up being 25-20. I just got all the wrong pieces here, man. That's one of those things. But again, it goes with it from that point. Nades, your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, another. You build lineups the same way. Obviously, I learned a lot from you over the years, listening to your shows, listening to your content. So I build very similar lineups here. This is typically how I like to build lineups, right? It's just when you correlate a lineup like this, Tambo, you talk about that parlay piece, right? You need less things to go right for you to win a lot of money when they do go right, right? Whereas if you come in here, run a single stack, right? You run Jalen Hurts, you run Dallas Goedert, and you run it back with Juju Smith-Schuster. Well, number one, that's probably the most common construction, whether it's AJ Brown or Dallas Goedert is your single Eagles piece. Run it back with probably the most popular option there in Juju, right? The highest price, the de facto number one receiver. You just need more things to go right to get all the way up to the top. So you said, I'm going to go in here. I expect Jalen Hurts. He's going to come in low owned up at the top because of his price point. People want to save some money at quarterback. I'm going to go ahead and overstack this game. Happened to be there. Obviously, Devontae Smith was a big piece of that. You got the Kendrick Bourne piece using our tools. Juju was fine, but it wasn't fine enough. And then obviously the defense is just defense that fit, right? Whatever fit there, you were already off the Denver guys there in Sutton and Marvin Mims. So I think it's a very well-constructed lineup. I build lineups very similar to this. And then the Madison piece was very good, right? Hey, maybe it's Madison. Maybe Jefferson does get those points, gets down there, doesn't find the box, gets hit at the 2, pass interference, any of that stuff. Madison gets down there, punches in for 2 touchdowns. Could very well happen.
Yeah, and one thing to note, I definitely think this was too aggressive, like seeing it after the fact, but it's like you said, it was still built where if it goes my way, this was definitely one of my more, going against the optimal. We know week 1 is a very heavy optimal week. You can get away with more. Like I could have went, it wouldn't have worked. Again, I'm not being results trying to say I could have went Jalen, Dallas Goedert, and Bourne and called it a day and been able to do something with these 2 guys. Again, not saying it would have worked out, but let's say this is Tyreek and let's say this is Mims, who did nothing, but just to give another idea and maybe go a little bit down here and up here. Like, would I have scored more points? Yes. But maybe I'm saying the game stack itself was a little bit too aggressive to hope them all to get there. I could have went with Mac Jones, the stack rankings, left out A.J. Brown, and been able to get Tyreek and then bump something else here, and just use little things like that where I could have got away with more, but it was just not how I was attacking the slate. And then the last one, I talked about this in the Discord. It was like the last one I posted like an hour before locks. I was going back and forth between, do I want to go Derek Carr or do I want to go Geno Smith for sort of my last other, upside lineup that I want to focus on a stack. And I just thought about this from a perspective of New Orleans has other guys there. They mix around way too many dudes. I thought this was still pretty set in stone. I was waiting on JSN. I didn't want to play him at 4,900. So I said, if I just go Geno, Lockett, Metcalf, Higbee as the run back, and then how do I use Washington D differently with Brian Robinson? I liked Raheem Mostert quite a bit, so I was still comfortable using him. And then a secondary stack that was different for PPR guys was mid-tier receivers in that game. DeAndre Hopkins and Michael Thomas not playing Jamal Williams, playing Michael Thomas at the same price instead, and just landing on Hopkins and saying, you know what, let's see if there's a little bit of a back and forth here. I don't like the running game against New Orleans, even though I think Henry ended up doing a couple things, but just in general, nothing crazy. So either way, again, did not work out. Really still almost putting up 100 was whatever, but just to say it, like there was stuff in this lineup I liked, but again, not as aggressive as the lineup below. I really like Geno for that reason. Anything else you want to add with this one, Nades?
Yeah, no, I'd say it's very well constructed. Obviously, Mostert, right, with the news there that broke too, he was going to be the number 1 running back. You're just going to take the running back from that piece. You did middle the ownership there with Washington, like you talked about, saw it in the Discord, and you talked about it on the show. How can you play them differently? You know they're going to be the chalk of the slate at their price point. We see this a lot with these defenses throughout the years, right? Whether news breaks, things like that. Throw the running back with them, especially a guy like Bijan, who is in that mid-tier range there, that was cheaper than same price as Jamal, right there, same thing. very low ownership. So overall, very well constructed. And then D-Hops and Thomas, right? Two guys that you can argue D-Hops price point. I mean, this guy was 80 in the 8.5s, right? The 8.9s. Much of last year, the season before, you can say, hey, I'm going to take a chance here. He's going to be unowned. Hopefully it's the D-Hop and Michael Thomas show. So very well constructed lineup. Obviously didn't get there, but we're not results oriented. It's all about the process. It's all about learning, all about becoming better players.
Yeah, trying to give you my thought process too. And like that was one of the things I talked about this earlier, not just how do you use the Washington D. So just talking through everything I just said. We talked about how to use it differently. For me, it was Robinson, 5,100. Guess who also was 5,100? Jamal Williams. But guess who also was 5,100? Michael Thomas in the same game, in the same spot. And then talking out loud, I said it was between Geno and Derek Carr. I didn't like Derek Carr, and I thought there's other ways that he can get screwed. So I was like, why not just take a guy that could rack up points with him? He did not. But my point being, even in the same build where I was considering Geno Smith or Carr, I still stuck to it, and I did some leverage this way. Leverage, get, like you said, balance out that ownership with Robinson. Don't play Jamal Williams, play Michael Thomas instead at the same price. And then also in the same lineup. And then also instead of Derek Carr, just take the piece that would collect some of those points. So even if Carr has a good day, there's a way that I can still collect those points. And then it actually would be the similar way coming back the other way. I know I didn't talk about them earlier, but I was talking about Jefferson and Adams in that next tier. Hopkins and Michael Thomas are for sure guys I think of like them, where they would just rack up PPR points, but not necessarily you're not going to necessarily need their quarterbacks for those teams, right? It's always tough. There's much better plays on the slate. I think the only reason I considered Carr was because Olave was popular, Jamal Williams was popular, Michael Thomas was popular, Michael Thomas was not popular, those two, and then I could use Michael Thomas. So I was like, there's ways that you could use that stack, but then I realized I thought there's Jawan, Taysom Hill, there's other guys there where I just thought maybe that's not the best way to go. So hopefully this was helpful for you guys. Any final thoughts from you, Nades, before we get out of here?
No, like you said, we want to make this more community focused. Obviously, I love this as a viewer. In years past, listening to the show, setting in lineups. So we'll definitely try and do more of that as the show goes on. Obviously, our partners over here at LionStar will be jumping on with us as well, talking through some of their stuff, talking through it. But overall, it's great. This is a most important process in DFS and getting better in creating that process, right? The course over here at SHIPIT Nation does talk about that a lot, but you can use this tool Fantasy Labs has for contest dashboard. See what every player in any contest on DraftKings did, what their exposures were, everything like that. And that's how you get better, right? Study from the best.
Yeah, I agree. And just to show one more time, you guys can check it out. Go to LionStar, use the promo code SHIPIT to get signed up. There's a lot of sports on there, but I love it for this tool specifically. Like you can go back and see other slates. You can go back in time from previous years, all that stuff, and see it and check it out. You can spend a lot of time on this site just checking it out. I think it's a great option. We'll have Tyler from LionStar on with us next week. He'll talk about it even more. One last time before we get out of here, I have to remind everyone, 3-2-1 bundle ends today. If you're already a member and you're signed up at $59, knowing it goes to $69 tonight, you can lock in $53 and change a month by upgrading. I posted it in the announcements over on the site. If you're a new member wanting to check us out, that $59 is for everything we offer on the entire site for the next month. If it's the 6 months, it's all 6 months, but we're going to have NBA, NHL. We just showed you our projections, everything that we've got with stack rankings, all of those things on the site. It's going to be a good year over at SHIPIT Nation. We had a ton of members. We tweeted out, go to follow us on Twitter at SHIPIT Nation to see some of the big wins. Our guy Nevs being the biggest winner with like 280K. Some of it was live final seats, but still huge day. Overall, Brandon won a King of the Beach seat. Our guy Title crushed the NFL slant for like 11K plus, the big $9 over there on DraftKings. And then Big Daddy Kane won 10K plus. A lot of other winners in the Discord as well. All bankrolls across the board. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We appreciate it. We'll be back live on this channel free in just 2 hours with myself, Hoop, and Title for the Monday Night Football Showdown show. For Nades, for myself, ToeTagginTambo. Let's ship it!